Matt George joined the live stream just uncomfortably squeezing kale.
Oh, hold on. No. You've been for years, Damian Barling. You've been trying to get me to eat vegetables. So I hear this tip on the radio. Hey, you get your kale and you squeeze it. So I got some kale, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I'm on here. I'm just trying to ask my man for help. And my man starts yelling at me. I'm just doing what he said.
First of all, I just hate the way that you're
What's wrong?
squeezing the kale. You got to cut it, Matt. You cut the kale first and then you squeeze it.
That was never said.
I think it was.
That was never. I just heard squeeze.
Put a little salt on it. It'll pull the moisture out.
What?
I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know what to do.
All I hope is Matt washed his hands before all of this.
It's all over my lap.
Look, we Matt, can't just waste that kale. Like you're
it's getting used. It's getting used. I was looking up what to do with it, and I thought I could skip step one because D'Lo already told me you squeeze it. So I skipped step one.
I don't know what you're gonna do with it once we start talking about the Kings. Like
it looks fine.
Where are you gonna put that kale now? It's soaking wet.
Do you need to go put it in the kitchen?
Go put the kale back in the kitchen, Matt. Do you at least have a plate or something? You didn't think this through, did you?
I got a bowl.
Okay, put it in the bowl. Put it in the bowl. And you can make your kale later.
You know what? I'm not eating freaking vegetables anymore. You bully me when I don't. You bully me when I do. I'm done.
I do not bully you when you don't eat vegetables. I just encourage you to not eat chips, Skittles, and a Mountain Dew for lunch.
Well, I don't have to squeeze any of them. It's pretty easy. I just open and start eating. Kale, got to cut it up and squeeze it and do all that nonsense. What the hell? Garbage.
Okay.
Are you aware of the things that you've said in the last 5 minutes?
Chatty House is.
We're going to be the first show to get an HR violation for our guest.
Like literally, the HR lady is 10 feet from us. She's walking right towards us.
Hi, I'm Matt George.
Hi, Matt.
Hello.
Maddie McQueen.
All of this is still better than talking about the Celtics game. So let's just bring Matt in on the conversation. Matt George, of course. Matt George is the news anchor, by the way.
I am.
This man is a news anchor. This man is a news anchor, a sports anchor over at ABC 10. Of course, the host of the Locked On Kings podcast. How do you think the Western Conference shapes out? We were just talking about Kenny. Kenny's adamant. Dallas may fall completely out of this thing. Starting to feel like maybe Phoenix falls out of something. I'm not in on that one like Kenny is, but he laid the case for Phoenix falling out of this. How do you think this, say, top six ultimately shakes out? Denver will be number one. We can start from Sacramento on down.
Well, I'm in agreement with Bonte in the sense that I don't want a Kings Warriors first series, but that's selfish for me for a couple reasons. One, for the Kings to finally get a top seed and then to get to defending champions, I think would be tough. Although Sacramento can absolutely win that series, assuming the Warriors still are terrible on the road and Mike Brown is still the Kings head coach. But and then selfishly, I don't want to have to travel to San Francisco. I did that enough at Chase Center last year and I'm good. But I mean, Denver's number one. I'm not saying the Kings are out of the number 2 spot, but I think once the Sacramento Kings clinch and once it becomes pretty comfortable that the Kings end up in that number 3 spot or at the very least top 4, I question whether or not Sacramento starts to consider resting players a little bit. Starts to consider, hey, this is the second night of a back-to-back. Fox, Sabonis, you're going to be playing close to 40 minutes a night for us in the playoffs. We have the expectation to go deep, so we're going to treat our games like that. I'm curious if Mike has that approach, or if Mike Brown is, we're playing every game like we have to win every game. Turn your phone off, Matt George. Jesus, what are you, a professional? Someone calling about my kale.
Probably. Wow. It's probably the HR person from ABC 10.
Probably. Anyway, so I think I'm pretty comfortable with the Kings at 3. I don't see Phoenix catching Sacramento. I mean, they just, a lot has to go right for them and wrong for Sacramento. So I think top 3 is pretty much a lock at this point for the Sacramento Kings, and I think it's going to be that 3 spot, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Around that 6 spot, I see OKC on the rise, and I don't know. I mean, looking at it right now, OKC is a game back of that 6 spot. That's a dream scenario for me because I think that would be one really, really fun series that the Sacramento Kings absolutely would win. The Minnesota Timberwolves, I know, is a matchup concern in terms of like the length that they have. Karl Anthony Towns is back. The reality is I expect Sacramento outside of the Warriors. I expect Sacramento, everybody that's in that 7 to 10 to 11 to 12 range, like I expect Sacramento to beat all of them in a best of 7 series, and that should be the way it is. The Los Angeles Clippers, I think the Kings can beat anybody. Like that's the reality is the Kings can beat anybody in this or in this conference, I believe. They're not going to have to prove that against the 2 top best teams, which is a good thing. And hopefully they won't have to prove that against Phoenix. So I think Sacramento should basically have the belief of, hey, whoever it is, bring it on, because you're coming into our place and we're not going to lose there. So, and for some reason, Sacramento's had more success this year on the road than they have at home. So hopefully they can figure that out here in these final couple weeks.
The last time I checked, I'll check again. Yep, the only team in the Western Conference with 20 plus road victories, 22 and 14 are the Sacramento Kings on the road. Ironically,
21 and 15 at home.
Yeah, I was just about to say more road wins than home wins this year.
Doesn't make sense.
But yeah,
which adds a whole weird dynamic to the Warriors series if it happens.
Yeah.
The Warriors can't win on the road. The Kings, it's not that they can't win at home. It's just they're
not dominant.
Yeah, they're not dominant at home.
Warriors are going to get that 10th win, I think. I don't know.
They're at 9 now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they got about 3 more road games. They'll get 1 more. I don't know. It might be against the Kings when the Kings aren't playing anybody.
Yeah, maybe it's that.
That might be it. But Matt, was there anything? I'll put Monday's game in there as well. I'll say the last 2 games that concerns you about the Kings. Like, is it? Did you see something that you just growing trend or something that you think could have a long-term effect with this team at all?
Nothing overly concerning. I will say the one thing that I pulled from the Utah Jazz game was not only did Sacramento not look ready to play against Utah, they didn't look ready to play their game. Like, that's what was most confusing about the start of the Utah Jazz game is Sacramento wasn't playing, like, running their offense. And I know Mike Brown said before the Celtics game, like, that was the most tired he's been going into a game as a coach. He was exhausted. So imagine how tired the players were. But at the same time, like, everybody plays 82. I know the schedule sucks, is the way it is. So nobody's using that as an excuse. Mike wasn't using it as an excuse. He was asked specifically if he thought the team was tired, and that was his answer to that. But we watched if you rewatch the first quarter of that Utah Jazz game, it's like a lot of ISO threes. The ball's not moving. Like, the Kings are one of the best teams in the league in sharing the basketball, just simply passing the ball, not necessarily assists, but the ball always moves and guys are always moving off the ball. It was a lot of standing around. Maybe the elevation had played a factor into it. As soon as the Kings started moving the ball around again, they made their way back into that game, which, by the way, even down 25, I feel pretty confident saying, I'm curious if you guys felt the same way. Like, I knew the Sacramento was going to work their way back into that game. Like, you just knew there's so much time left. This wasn't who the Sacramento Kings were going to be the entire night. So what I wanted from the Boston game was a response, and I got the response right away. Even though the Kings didn't win the game, they came out aggressive, playing their game offensively. Shots were falling. They looked really, really good offensively in the first half of that game. Then they forced the Boston Celtics to turn on what I call that championship gear. We saw the Milwaukee Bucks turn it on against the Kings too. But the Boston Celtics championship gear is, hey, we're going to continue to score. And even if De'Aaron Fox is playing smothering defense against Jason Tatum, he's still going to hit jumpers. And then on defense, we're going to shut you down and we're going to switch on Sabonis and force you into isolation and not allow you to play your game. I mean, I think it's telling that the 2 games against the Boston Celtics this year, 104 points, 109 points, when the Kings average 121 a game. Like, there wasn't anything really the Kings did wrong necessarily. I think it's just the Boston Celtics knew, okay, we know what to throw at them, and defensively we can handle them a little bit. And I look at that, and my takeaway from that is, okay, Boston can do that. Maybe Milwaukee can do that, although the Kings did a better job scoring against Milwaukee in their own building. What team in the Western Conference is going to do that to the Sacramento Kings? I'm not concerned about it. So maybe, like, you can look at the film from that game and you can say, oh, wow, look what the Boston Celtics were able to do. Okay, the Kings can be stopped a little bit. Show me the team in the West that is going to do that to the Kings. So I'm not overly concerned.
Yeah, you don't have Marcus Smart in a season of playing defense that's going to enable you to do something against them that you haven't done at all this season.
Yep.
Which is why, the Boston game can be frustrating, but nothing that you really panic over. You mentioned response, Matt. I'm anxious to see their response tomorrow, which is, probably the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th time we've said that this year. And so far, they might be 15-0 in their responses. Like we've called them out a handful of times, and it's like, okay, what's going to happen here? How are you going to respond to this? We talked about the Indiana game. There have been plenty of games in the past this season where we've wanted a response to a bad game, and they've had the days off. And this is an important game for Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge game for Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see how Sacramento responds to this.
I remember it seems like every single year, one of the talking points coming into each season was the Sacramento Kings need to establish their identity. Who are they as a team? What is their identity as a team? Well, obviously this team's identity is heavily on the offensive end, but their ability to respond when needed, whether it was in a game or at a point in the schedule during a stretch, like they've been able to consistently do that. So the expectation should be that they're going to do it again, regardless of their competition. And I asked Mike Brown about this before the Boston Celtics game. The Kings haven't lost 3 straight since November. Like the Kings lost 4 straight to start the season, rattled off a few wins, lost 3 straight in November. Since then, the most is 2 consecutive. And I don't think this is the first time they've lost 2 consecutive games since the All-Star break. So this team has done a really, really good job of avoiding extended losing streaks. And based off of past years, if we're calling 3 an extended losing streak now, the Kings are doing something right, because we've seen 6, 7, 8, 9 at times. So like this team's ability to respond, in my opinion, you should just expect it from this team at this point, which is also why I like them in a series scenario, in a playoff series scenario, because I believe in a hypothetical scenario where, unfortunately, the Kings lose game 1, I expect them to respond and win game 2. And if you look at all the series that the Kings have played in those the 2-game back-to-back against the same opponent series so far this season that the NBA's implementing more and more, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Kings are undefeated in game 2. So they've done a really good job responding, and I give a lot of credit of that to Mike Brown and to Mike Brown's coaching staff, even though John Hollinger now all of a sudden thinks that the coach of the year is in Oklahoma City, apparently. Regardless,
could you not give him coach of the year?
Anyway, it's become the identity of this team to respond when needed, and I expect them to against a Phoenix team who, with or without Kevin Durant, the Kings have lost to them twice without Kevin. So there's no, oh, good, Kevin Durant's not playing, this will be easier. Nah, like you're at home. This is a team you might face in the opening round. It's a team you might face in the playoffs, period. Respond.
Yeah, absolutely. There was some video I was watching on the Sacramento Kings on YouTube, and the guy who was making the video said something. Maybe you're familiar with the Matt, maybe you are too. I can't remember Mike Brown saying this, but it sounds like something he would say.
Mm-hmm.
But he said one of the keys to this season is you can have a bad day, you can have a bad game, but we got to make sure the bad game doesn't turn into a bad week.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been able to do that all year long. And we're kind of seeing that in this week, in this situation. Now, it won't hit them as hard as if they were facing this situation in like January or February, because they're kind of solidified at this point. But that if he said it, I'm sure he did. I don't have any reason to believe why the guy would just make it up. But that seems to be a pretty good mantra to have. And they've been able to keep that from happening all year long. And that's kind of what they're faced with right now. You can have a bad game against the Jazz. You can have a bad loss against the Boston Celtics, but just make sure you come out of this whole week 2-2. Don't let the bad game or the one bad game or 2 bad games turn into a bad week. And I think that's what they'll be looking for this weekend.
And I know Coach Brown likes to implement the 5-game series. Like he splits up his season into 5-game series. And it's very clear that the team follows that, because you can see them have a patch of maybe they go 3-2 over 5 games and they still respond and maybe go 4-1 over the next. Or maybe that 5 games is at times 1-4 early in the season, or 2-3, and they respond quickly to start. Like it's clear Mike Brown has an ability with this team to almost hit a reset button. Like, hey, let's evaluate what we did wrong here, and let's implement those changes immediately. And that's one of the things I like the most about this coaching regime is whether it's in-game adjustments or it's game-to-game adjustments or week-to-week adjustments. You can point to a ton of different team and individual accomplishments that this team has made over the course of the season and go, they struggled with that, and then a day later or a quarter later or even the next time they were in the game, they addressed it and corrected it. And like Terrence Davis has done that with the defensive end. Keegan Murray has done that on the defensive end. Keegan Murray has done that attacking the basket aggressively. You'll hear Mike Brown say something publicly, and then the next game, it's different. It's changed. And then we know, of course, he's saying even more privately than he's saying publicly and holding these guys accountable. And the best part is the guys are hearing that and implementing that. Like I know we love Terrence Davis on this show. I give Terrence Davis so much credit because he stays ready. He has this situation where when Kessler Edwards was named the starter, I can't remember what game that was, but Kessler Edwards was named the starter, and my immediate reaction was, I wonder how TD feels about this. Because Terrence hasn't played bad. He's had some really good games offensively for the Kings, but we know this Kings team can score. Mike is clearly looking for defense. It's like, I wonder how Terrence is going to respond to this. Terrence comes in and plays more minutes than Kessler Edwards and is one of the best scorers on the team that night. He stayed ready. And on top of that, Terrence has multiple times publicly talked about, yeah, I wasn't doing enough. Mike told me to do this. I took it and I tried to do it. And then Mike started rooting for me and cheering for me. Like, that shows a crap ton of maturity from a player who came into the season saying, look, I thought I was the best player in the league last year in the minimal minutes and minimal role that I had. And I think he had a point. So I imagine there's egos in that locker room, of course, but they don't let it come out and they don't let it affect how they approach what Mike Brown wants to do. And I think it all goes back to that contract that he had all of them sign saying we're all in 100%. And you see that across the roster. It's not just one or two guys going, oh, wow, these guys are really buying in. Everybody is doing this. Everybody understands their role. They take their notes and they implement change. And that's a culture that Mike has established that we have not seen in 11 head coaches.
Yeah.
Steeler and KC here on KIFM West Sacramento 98.5 FM KRX QHD2 Sacramento ESPN 1320. Always live on the free Odyssey app. Matt George, Locked On Kings, ABC 10, with us here now. Friendly reminder, we will be dipping out a little bit early as we'll be going to the NCAA tournament here at the bottom of this hour. We'll be doing that the next 2 days. That'll be a wrap, but we do want to get you out to the tournament coming up again at the bottom of this hour. Matt, you mentioned Keegan Murray. Keegan obviously approaching that rookie 3-point record. He had some incredible shooting days over this last little stretch of ball here. Kenny pointed something out with him, like defensively. Are you concerned about him guarding these upper echelon wings for an entire series when we get into the playoffs here?
Yes, and I think that's fair. And I think that's okay. Like he had a number of possessions where he was guarding Jaylen Brown and Jaylen went at him every time. And I'm like, good. Like this, if you're going to be a starter, if you're going to be, and I'm already ready to label him like, I think the big three is already here in Sacramento. I think their big three is here. I think it's De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis. I think Keegan Murray is that third. I think he's only going to get better. And he's shown that over the course of his season, what he can do in a short sample size of addressing different areas of his game. So what is he going to be in 2 or 3 years from now, in addition to already the great shooter that he is? So like, I think Keegan needs that. I think everybody on this team needs that. Like, how's De'Aaron Fox going to do? And De'Aaron is not backed away from guarding the best guard, even though the best guard is typically not guarding him. And De'Aaron's talked about that. He hasn't backed away from that. But if the Kings play the Warriors in an opening series, is De'Aaron taking that Steph Curry challenge on? And does Steph remind him why he's a multi-time MVP and multi-time champion a little bit? Like, I think everybody on this roster needs to go through that to some extent. But yeah, Keegan should be a concern. I think Keegan is going to be isolated a lot. I think Keegan's going to be picked on a lot. There are going to be times when Keegan rises to the challenge. I'd say probably more often than not, he's not going to. Defensively, like, we kind of know what the Kings are. And if Keegan's offense is affected, or if Keegan slows down on the offensive side of the ball or is not effective on the offensive side, or if his defense is so bad that no matter what he's doing on offense, it doesn't matter, then you have to start really being concerned, like, okay, maybe I have to take him out of the game and replace him with somebody else. But I don't think we're going to get to that point. I think there are going to be clear growing pains. I think teams are going to obviously try and switch Keegan onto one of their best players, especially if that best player is a wing. And I think it's going to be trial by fire in a lot of ways that the rookie needs. And based off of how Keegan has played and how hard he has worked, I expect him to respond. So if, again, in a game one scenario where the Kings lose and Keegan's getting picked to shreds, game 2, I expect something different. And I think Keegan and Mike and the rest of the coaching staff will work together to implement that.
And there's a couple things there. Number one, I feel like we have seen that already this year in certain games where Coach Brown has looked at Keegan like he's not doing what I need him to do defensively. He's not maybe setting out a set time, but he ends up playing like 22 minutes in the game because he's got to go with what's works on the defensive end. The other thing, much like the Sacramento Kings as a whole, I don't know how many times Keegan is going to be matched up with somebody like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Like those guys are different. Even when you look at like Kevin Durant, like say KD comes back, they play him in the playoffs. Like Kevin's a different player at this point in his career than Tatum or Brown. Tatum and Brown will take you to the cup every single time if need be. There's not a whole lot of guys that are willing to do that every single time. And when you talk about like maybe being able to guard guys on their pull-up, that's where Keegan's length with his arms and things of that nature could kind of help him stay above water, stay afloat against those type of guys. So, yeah, they were going to work on him on Tuesday. But once again, that's a little bit of a unique case going up against those two guys. Those are two of the best in the game.
Oh, I think it's an absolutely fair point too. And Jesse, I can see you through the glass, so don't get too excited. But like Boston is so good in the sense that they have two guys that you can play great defense on, and it does not matter. I mean, there were multiple possessions where the Kings played really good defense against both of them. But I mean, I remember 2 or 3 possessions of De'Aaron Fox deciding, hey, Tatum, we're friends. You were at my wedding. Like, we're really, really close. I'm not letting you get a good shot off here. And Tatum said, okay, bet, and still hit it over the top of De'Aaron. And De'Aaron played it about as well as you possibly could. Like sometimes guys just are shot makers, and the Celtics have 2 of them in Brown and Tatum, not to mention the great supporting cast that they have there. So like, I really enjoy watching the Boston Celtics play basketball, even if it's at the expense of the Sacramento Kings. Like they do it really, really well on both ends of the floor. They're a really deep team. They're the team that I expect to come out of the Eastern Conference. And I've said many times on this show, the champion is in the East, in my opinion. So I can't wait for the Eastern Conference playoffs just to see what they do. But I agree with your point completely, Kenny. It's the same way that I don't take too much away from the Kings only scoring 109 and 104 points against Boston. A team is built different. Thankfully, the Kings don't have to worry about facing them unless it's in the NBA Finals. So, and hey, get there and lose in the NBA Finals. I'll take that scenario. I don't know about y'all, but I don't know if Keegan's going to ever have as difficult of an assignment as trying to keep one eye on Jaylen, the other eye on Tatum, not to mention having to worry about Al Horford and everybody else on that team that can score on you if you're not paying attention.
Are you one of the many people locally, I believe, and nationally who take Domantas Sabonis for granted?
In a tiny way, because I actually tweeted this out the other day, like, Domantas Sabonis had a double-double, and I think it was one of the games during the road trip, and I was like, oh, cool. It's like, wait a minute, what do you mean, oh, cool? It's like number 56 of the season or something like that. What do you mean, oh, cool? Like, and I think De'Aaron's wife, Rasay, put it perfectly. Like, I hope nobody takes for granted what Sabonis does. And I think we already kind of do in the sense that, like, he's so good, and we see the stat lines that he puts up in the first quarter where he's already flirting with a triple-double at the end of the first quarter, and you're like, yeah, that's just what he does.
Yeah.
But no, I don't take Domantas Sabonis for granted in the sense that he is. I mean, he's shown a lot of different ways how he can be effective. I thought early on in the season he was very much a pass first big, and there were times where I was like, attack, shoot more, score more. Lately, I think Sabonis has recognized maybe the fatigue of some of his players with Kevin Huerter being out, and he said, okay, I'm going to try and go get mine. I think Sabonis has been a lot more aggressive trying to attack the basket, score around the rim. Now that's resulted in him getting hit in the face even more than he normally does, poor guy, and can't get a foul call to save his life. And maybe you should change his name to Austin Reeves or whatever that guy's name is in LA. But like Sabonis is in the best way, like an absolute freak of nature. He can do so many different things, beat you in so many different ways. I thought at times he was getting a little ahead of himself. He was making what I call like the Tyreek Evans mistake, where he was picking up his dribble and looking to pass and then leaving his feet. And that he had 6 turnovers against Boston, if I'm not mistaken. So there are a couple times where it's like, okay, maybe you're trying to do a little too much here, but I understand why. Like if you need Sabonis to score, he'll score. If you need him to pass, he'll pass. If you need him just to set screens to stand in the corner in the fourth quarter to the De'Aaron work, he'll do that. Like I'll say it a million times. To me, the only thing more impressive than Domantas Sabonis' numbers is Domantas Sabonis' attitude as a teammate. Like he could have come into Sacramento and said, "I'm the 2-time All-Star. I'm the guy. I'm scoring every single time. De'Aaron, fall in line." He didn't. He came in and said, "How am I not just going to help De'Aaron win and get all the recognition he deserves? How am I going to help everybody on this roster get theirs?" And it's led to immediately guys like Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes saying he's the easiest guy in the world to play with. So
Yeah.
Sabonis is something that I think it's easy to be lulled into an area of I just expect good numbers from him, but you can never take him for granted.
Yeah, I'm with you. We talked about this a number of different times. I'll ask you about it though. Is there a scenario where you're disappointed with the Sacramento Kings season? I talk about it because they've passed that. There's nothing that they can do realistically at this point that will leave me disappointed. When the season comes to an end, whether that's first round or NBA finals, yeah, I'm gonna be, upset that the season is over, and that they lost the series, that they lost to the Mavericks. I'll be frustrated. Like, how could you lose to those guys? But disappointed in this group, I think that's long gone. Is there a spot for you that will leave you disappointed with this team?
Yeah, if we're using the term disappointed, like I think if the Kings were swept in the opening round, I would be very disappointed. And I would be more disappointed because I don't think that's possible with this team. Like, I cannot envision a scenario where this team loses 4 straight games to any competition in the Western Conference. And if they did, then I would be like, okay, we did not get to see enough of a sample size of what I wanted to see. Or maybe that tells Monty McNair everything he needs to know about what he needs to do this offseason. Of course, there could be outliers in there, knock on wood, of any kind of injuries or anything like that, but I don't even want to consider that. Like, I would be disappointed if the Kings were swept, absolutely. But the one thing that no matter what happens in the playoffs will not change, Kenny, the word that I'll use is like grateful or thankful. Like, this has been such an incredibly fun year just in terms of vibes, in terms of like for the career, for podcasts, for D'Lo and KC. Like, it's just been such an amazing year for all of us, such a fun ride that they've taken us all on. And I don't want the regular season to end because we're one step closer to getting into next season where there are legit expectations. Now, that's not a bad thing because I expect this team to do what they need to do to live up to those expectations. But this year has been just such a Kings basketball is fun again, and let's just soak it all in. And I've been trying to ride that wave as much as possible. Now that we're getting closer to the playoffs, I'm starting to ask myself questions that I've never asked myself before. Like, hey, should the Kings consider resting for the opening round? Or which opponent would the Kings best match up against in the first round? And what's their best path to the Western Conference Finals? Like, I've never had to think about this before, and I'm excited to think about it. But there's nothing that can happen that will not make me thankful for this team. And I'll remember this season for forever. Like, this season has just been so special in so many ways.
I get emotional about this. I'm about to cry.
Sorry. I had to press that button.
No longer with the Lions, by the way.
Yeah, I saw that.
That was crazy.
That is a bit wild.
Yeah, I think he went to the Saints.
Yeah, he's a Saint.
You mentioned it's funny because you said it twice in different contexts, but about resting, shutting guys down. That feels like the most anti Mike Brown thing.
I agree.
Like the Kings are locked in the 4 seed. Cool. Kings are locked in the 3 seed. Great. Let's go get better. Like you're not even getting an extra day off. If you're on the Sacramento Kings and you're coached by Mike Brown, that does not feel like something he would do.
They might go 2 a days.
It might get 2 a days to get ready for the playoffs. Got to get ready.
You know what's? I'm 100% with you. That's why I'm posing the question, because it just doesn't seem right. It just doesn't seem like something Mike Brown would do. It also doesn't seem like a thing that the Kings players would necessarily want to do. Like, especially with how their roster, their season ends. Their last 2 opponents are what? The Warriors and the Nuggets, right?
Yep.
So those are 2 teams that are going to be in the playoffs. And Sacramento, I mean, they've never shied away from trying to send a message. So we had a fun couple of days where we envisioned it, and it's still mathematically possible, but we envisioned that Kings Nuggets game being for the number 1 seed, which would have been just an incredible way to end the year. That's probably not going to happen. But regardless, like, I mean, if that's not going to happen, the Nuggets are shutting down for that game. So Does Mike consider shutting down as well and believing that his second unit can also win that? Or does he say, nope, y'all are shutting down. We're going to use this as a tune-up game for game one. We're sending one last final message. Let's go up at a 12:30 a.m. start and beat this team by 25. But I'm with you. It doesn't seem like a Mike Brown thing to do.
Yeah, the tricky part of that is you're going to get like 5 days off. So really, you don't do it for rest. You do it to avoid injury. And you could get 35 minutes from PJ Dozier in that game, and 41 minutes from Kessler Edwards. Maybe
Davion play a lot.
Yeah. No, Delly play a lot. That's the Matthew Dellavedova game.
Yeah. Delly will be cooking.
Delly cook going for 16 that night.
Gonna be looking like Game 3, 2015.
Well, they'll get that man an IV when the game's over.
I love Delly, but did you see how hard he hit the backboard on his straightaway 3 in Utah when nothing was going right in the first quarter? Like, he shot that and it went boom. I was like, Jesus.
The funny part was we saw him in Utah. Delly gets up and goes to the scores. They're like, did he get up on accident? Like, what the hell is going on here?
Is he doing his timeout run?
Yeah.
Keon in that first half too. I was like, damn.
Mike's pissed. When you could tell Mike's level of frustration by who he puts into the game, and that was peak frustrated Mike Brown when he called for Delly and Keon Ellis.
Mike said, "I'm gonna try and throw something at the wall and see if it works." And Delly said, "Bet," and chucked the basketball as hard as he could.
He threw it at the wall for sure.
It's like, whoa.
Hey,
That'll motivate Terrence. Come on, TD. It's either get it together or I'm going to keep doing that.
Did we ever get was that a poll question that we asked, or was it just we just asked?
I think I forgot to post it. I'm not going to lie.
No worries,
I forgot to post it.
Well, I'll ask Matt. Matt, there's a scenario we've been trying for.
What you say, by the way, is about to carry weight because we can't decide what happens. Yeah. So this is not this has major ramifications.
We were all week. We've been trying to get my kale.
Put your kale away, Matt.
We were trying to all week. We've been trying to get a celebration on Saturday. We've been trying to get a clinch on Saturday. The only scenarios we have right now is somehow the closest the Kings can get on Saturday is what we call a clinch-ish, right? So they clinch because they're tied with the Timberwolves, but the Timberwolves have the tiebreaker. So it's almost impossible to not clinch, but we won't know until Minnesota plays on Sunday, right? So if they're able to win Friday and Saturday, the Sacramento Kings, and they get in that clinched-ish situation, do we celebrate on Saturday, or if Minnesota loses on Sunday, do we all reconvene Sunday evening back at Doko to celebrate then when they actually do clinch?
And for the record, I hate both of these options.
Yes, I agree.
The other alternative is, hey, Sky Moke, get on your feet. We're getting ready for tip-off. Oh, by the way, the Kings clinched on Sunday. Round of applause. Like, what do we do then? No. I need when something happens. Boom, we out there. Let's go.
Okay, Matt, go ahead. I have an alternative.
I want to hear that one first. I don't want to talk about
it. Can we just celebrate Sunday? Like, can we?
That's what I said. That's one of the options.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. Check that. Can we just celebrate Monday? Like before the game or after the game? Can we see what Too Short's doing? Maybe blow the whistle. Maybe call it a Sugar Hill Gang. Can we do something and not? Because how are we going to orchestrate it? What are we going to tweet? Hey, we'll be out at Doko.
Tweet, we're by the main entrance. Come pull up on us.
Come pull up. Drapes hates when we do that. Come pull up. We're at the main entrance.
I don't know, man. I don't, like Mike Tyson once said, I don't know, man. What?
I don't like any of these scenarios, and I'll tell you why. The reason why I don't like any of the scenarios is because I know myself and I know how impatient I am. So my ideal situation is wait till it's actually set in stone, clinched, and celebrate then. But if I'm walking out on Saturday night after back-to-back Kings wins, knowing that it's almost impossible for the Timberwolves to what the T-Wolves have to win out and the Kings have to lose out now for that to become a scenario, right? Like that's what has to happen. My impatience would not allow me to not celebrate that. So I hate all the scenarios. I guess I will take that one, the clinch-ish, just because it's after a Kings game and we're there.
Matt George said it.
I don't like it though. Don't attach my name to it.
No, Matt George said it. I believe you were the deciding vote. I believe you are the authority. You are the Triple H in this.
I don't want to be.
You were definitive. No. Now, let's all be aware the Kings have to win tomorrow for any of this to matter.
For sure.
So is it a better scenario if the Kings lose tomorrow and then win Saturday and then win Monday? Do they clinch on Monday?
I think they do clinch on
So
Monday.
Lose tomorrow.
Well, then what if they lose on Saturday or Monday?
Yeah.
And then they're gone for like a week.
Yeah, I don't want them to clinch in Portland. I just want them to clinch, and I want this part of it to be over with.
I agree. I want it to happen in Sacramento.
Get the little Y next to your name.
Yeah.
Y'all, it's been 16 years. Like, we don't deserve to have this clinch-ish scenario. We deserve to have our Patrick Beverley jump on the table moment at
I agree.
Center
and cry.
Clinch-ish garbage.
We deserve the right to cry.
Fix it, NBA.
That's why I think I'm going with clinch-ish, man. Everybody's there. Everybody's there.
Kenny's going to jump on the announce table.
I can't wait for Drapes to try to set. So the Kings kind of clinched the playoff spot tonight.
Kenny's on the table swinging his shirt around. We kind of did it. I love it.
Ish. Yeah, I'll just put the Y up there.
Sad.
Put it on the broadcast. I don't care. Put it there.
Oh, man. They're going to have to get the job done. Well, hey, just trying to go 1-0 every day.
1-0 every day. Let's ride.
Get the job done tomorrow. Matt George, great stuff as always. Make sure you check out Locked On Kings. Matt, please put your kale away. The show is still going on. Put your kale away.
So like once I get it all dry though, then do I cook? Like, is it what do I put on the stove or like what do I do?
I don't think you do anything with that kale anymore.
I think you probably throw that kale away. I'm gonna be completely honest with you, Matt. Throw that kale away.
Like $3.